documentation and history of the Pra Putta Chinarat amulet, Run Indo-China War ceremony of 2485, which was officially released at, of course, Wat Sutat, yeah, but actually passed through many ceremonies, as did many amulets in the Indo-China War series. In the year 2483, the winds of war began to be felt across Indo-China, Southeast Asia, and many countries fell into civil or war or invasion from other countries or war with other countries. And Thailand was, of course, one of those countries. This was many different wars going on. It was called the Indo-China wartime, yeah. And even though Thailand was trying its best to stay out of all wars, just like it did with the colonial invasions of the French and the Portuguese and the British in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia and Burma, or Myanmar if you want to call it that, and Cambodia or Kampuchea and Laos. You had the French. You had the British in Burma and the British in Malaysia and Singapore. You had the French. You had the Portuguese in Indonesia. And came later. Or before, actually. Before, sorry. So, because of the Indo-China War and Thailand being involved to protect their soldiers through the Thai Buddhist belief that sacred amulets, and especially Buddha, will protect. There was the decision to make some, by the Putta Samakom Heng Patet Thai, the Thai Buddhist official organization, body, decided to create the Pra Putta Chinarat replica of the statue in the size of Busha statues and also small statuettes and Rian Law coins that you could wear around your neck for the soldiers and police and people at home to be protected from bomb shelling. But in the beginning, there were two different societies, Buddhist societies, focusing on making them, which would be double. The Samakom Puttatam Samakom, and the Yuva Putta Sasanikatam, two different groups. So that was put to a halt by the state and the Sangha until the year 2483, where the Indo-China War started to get very, very, very heavy. And even though it calmed down in the year 2484, in the year 2483, because the war began to increase and then calmed down in 2484, was a little bit quieter, and there was a chance to move a little bit. The Putta Samakom Heng Patet Thai, the one society, then began to make the amulets. And so the Yuva Putta Sasanikatam society was not given the right to do it. It was the Putta Samakom Heng Patet Thai, the Society of Buddhists of Thailand, were able to move forward and create the Pra Putta Chinarat amulets, finally, for real. So the Pra Putta Chinarat, Run Indo-China 2485 BE, had a very special ceremony, of course, and the Piti Putta Pisek Buddha Abhiseka, opening eyes of the Buddha blessing ceremony, and the Te Tong Law ceremony, which is the pouring of the gold and silver and sacred metals into the forge to forge the metallic amulets, was performed at Wat Prasi Ratana Mahathat, the temple of the majestic jeweled Buddha relic. Yeah, that's the meaning of the name of the temple, Wat Prasi Ratana Mahathat, in Pitsanulok, which is, of course, the temple where the real Pra Putta Chinarat Buddha statue is installed in the Uposatha shrine room, which is so famous for its Kongrapan and Kraukrat powers and life-saving powers. Even somebody who bought a locket from me once was walking past the Brahma statue when the bomb exploded many years ago in Thailand. From the Urgent people, they exploded a bomb on the Brahma statue, and many people were hurt and killed. And my friend and his family were walking past, and he was wearing a Putta Chinarat, and he wrote to me. He said, "The locket I got from you, it saved me and my family's life, because we were all unhurt and everybody else was lying around in blood, and the only thing I had was a crack on the locket." As if to say, like, the locket was telling him in his belief that, okay, the locket's cracked, but it saved the lives of your family. So whether that's true or not is a matter of faith, but it is very famous Buddha for protection. Yeah, and there are many stories. Up to you what you believe. So at Wat Pasi Ratana Mahathat in Pitsanulok on Saturday, on the 5th lunar procession, in the 3rd lunar month, which aligned with the 1st of February of the year 2485 BE, got just before the committee, the Kanagamagan of the Putta Samakom, who were the creators of the amulet, came to beseech and ask for metta at the temple from Tan Jau Prakun Somdet Pra Sankarat Pair. Pra Sankarat Pair, the great royal monk, was, of course, in charge of at that time. Somdet Pra Sankarat Pair Tit Suateva Mahatera from Wat Sutat. So Luang Po Pair of Wat Sutat, Pra Sankarat. The Sankarat means royal monk, Sankaracha monk of Wat Sutat Tep Wararam in Bangkok, to allow this blessing ceremony to be performed there and the release of the amulets as well as Wat Pasi Ratana Mahathat. So Prasankarat pair, of course, had the metta to give the Kanagamagan Putta Samakom permission to bring the Putta Chinarat Indo-China edition amulets from Wat Pasi Ratana Mahathat, which will have already been blessed there, to be given the Piti Putta Pisek, Buddha Abhiseka blessing ceremony within the Pra Uposat, or if you prefer, the Uposatha shrine room at Wat Sutat Tep Wararam in Bangkok. Yeah, so famous for its Tawet Suan amulets and all the amulets of Luang Por Supot and the Indo-China ceremony, which was, of course, the second biggest blessing ceremony in the history of Thailand. On the 21st, on the 21st of March in the year 2485, with Tan Jau Prakun Somdet Pra Sankarat Pair Tit Sutewa Mahatera, the Sankaracha himself, being presiding over the blessing ceremony, and Tan Jau Kun Si Satchayana Muni, that's Luang Por Sonti, or Luang Por Son, yeah, who was you could say the mother of the whole event, managed the whole event, and many monks, of course, present, which you shall hear shortly, to perform the ceremony. Sonti or Son, Chao Kun Si Satyayana Muni was asked to do the ceremony of the pouring of the sacred metals according to the Tamra Gan Sang Prat Kring. Tamra Gan Sang Prat Kring means the recipe and the vicha and the ceremonial and ritual methods and ingredients necessary for making and empowering, and the metallurgical smelting methods for making Prat Kring, medicine Buddha statuettes, which are of course the famous Prat Kring Mahayana Buddhas holding the Vajra, which have a little rattling bead of Chanuan metal inside, or Lek Lai. Almost everybody knows the Prat Kring Buddha. So the ritual for the casting ceremony was exactly the same. Tamra ingredients and empowerment, which are as for Prat Kring and Prat Chayawat, which they always used at Wat Sutat, because Prat Kring and Prat Chayawat are also very, very famous amulets of the temple of Wat Sutat is very famous for Prat Kring and Prat Chayawat, and Tawet Suwan. So this ritual was performed completely according to the Vicha Prat Kring. The Pra Putta Piti Pra Putta Pisek Buddha blessing ceremony was a very, very, very big event, and it became historic because there were just so many people, and it was known all around the country, and so many monks were invited from around the country. And so this edition of Amulets is seen as it's still talked about to this very day, and it's immortal. So it's one of the immortal top 3 or top 4 most historic and largest amulet blessing ceremonies in the history of Thailand, and famous for their sacred powers all around the world, in fact. And the amount of famous monks who were present is also legendary, who came to put their minds together and empower the amulets. The Putta Chinarat, Indo-China 2485, was actually initiated from Ponroto, a policeman, Luang Thamrong Nawa Sawat. Luang Thamrong Nawa Sawat was the sponsor, who was actually the president of the Putta Samakom of the Buddhist Society and the committee of the Buddhist Society. So he stipulated that there should only be 2 different kinds of Putta Chinarat made, meaning the Prat Busha and amulets that the Gromsin, the Buddhist Arts Ministry, the Gromsilapakon, and the Buddhist Arts Ministry would help design and perform the forging and mix of the metals properly, and the pressing of the metal amulets properly. So, Busha statues, coins and statuettes. The Prat Busha statues in this time they were of course images of the Pra Putta Chinarat from Wat Yai, Wat Prasiratana Sasadaram in Pitsanulog, of course. And they used a method that brought the statues out with a matte effect, not a shiny, with a polished effect, very polished effect. At least in the documented evidence that they were polished, and they should have a polished effect. So if you have a Pra Putta Chinarat from the Indo-China ceremony, you should see that it is not matte, that it should have a polished effect on it. They had quite a wide base, although I'm not sure about this documentation that is today, because I usually see 5-inch statues from the Indo-Jin, but normally if you make Buddha statues, you will make 3, 5, and 9-inch, and even bigger ones, but usually at least 5 and 9-inch statues. But I don't have the full evidence, so I would say there's probably 5 and 9-inch made. It's not really clear. And these Busha statues were then distributed, of course, for people to have in their homes, for Busha, for Sata, for their faith and protection within their home. At the time, which is a very, very long time ago, 2485, now is 2564. So, what's that? 80 years ago. They were sold at 150 baht, which is about $5. Now I don't know how much now for a statue, but definitely thousands of dollars. And that was given to the Kanagamagan through Ngan Pendin. Well, officially checked every donation, every payment, every statue, every amulet, every penny was counted and went to the proper purpose. Within the royal palace was counted by trustworthy members of the Sangha and properly filed, which doesn't always happen these days with modern amulets. Sometimes money goes missing. And then, of course, there was the Rian Pra Putta Chinarat and Pra Putta Chinarat Loyong statuettes also made in this edition, of which they made between the Busha statues and the metallic coins and the statuettes and other amulets within the Indo-China blessing ceremony edition, a number of 84,000 amulets, which is the same number of the number of teachings within the Buddhist canon, the Tripitaka, Baitman Sipan Pat Dhammakan, the 84,000 sutras within the Buddhist Tipitaka. And now the interesting bit, that the Pitikamagan, Pruksek, the blessing ceremony, had so many famous monks and powerful monks of the time present to perform the blessing. And this is what makes the amulets so sacred and powerful to the hearts of the faithful, I believe, because the rest is historic, what I have just told, and artistic, of course, the artistic design and the collectorship value and the historic value and the documentation. But what is important to those who wear for protection and for good karma and metta and good luck. What is probably more important is who blessed it, who was there, whose powers are in this. Although with the Buddha Chinarat, Buddha, just the image of the Buddha is believed to have power in itself. And of course your faith in the Buddha brings that connection of psychic power. But anyway, here are some of the monks who were involved in the blessing ceremony of the Pra Putta Chinarat amulets of the Indo-China War ceremony edition released at Wat Sutat in 2485. We had Somdet Prat Sankarat Jaren. There was the great Lumpur Jad, also Indo-China War, great master of Wat Bangapao. We had the great Lumpur Ding of Wat Bang Wua, so famous for his monkey, Vanora, amulets, carved amulets and paladkik. Lumpur E of Wat Satahib, so famous for many different kinds of amulets, so too many to list. Lumpur Plien of Wat Tai, so famous for his Vicha Pirod. Lumpur Oi of Wat Sai, Lumpur Tong Suk of Wat Tanot Luang, so famous for his Luk Omna Krang, his Takrod, his coins, and various other kinds of amulets of Lumpur Tong Suk, such as his Prat Pitta, Lumpur Chem of Wat Ta Gong, another great master, famous for many kinds of amulets. Lumpur Jong of Wat Na Tang Nok in Ayutthaya, perhaps one of the most preferred Indo-China wartime masters, especially internationally, by people around the world. Lumpur Jong of Wat Na Tang Nok, great master. And Lumpur Phuak of Wat King Kao in Bangkok, who was Luksit of Somdet Do of Wat Rakang. Lumpur Jan of Wat Nang No, also a great master, not so known by foreigners. Lumpur Rung of Wat Tha Gabu, so famous for his Kongapan Takut. Lumpur Chuang of Wat Bang Prak Thai. Lumpur Chuang of Wat Ban Prak Thai must have been the Kruba Ajahn of Lumpur Malai of Wat Ban Prak, I believe. Lumpur Piam of Wat Kok Lak. Lumpur Nak of Wat Rakang, and so many others, with Somdet Sankarat being, of course, the presiding over the ceremony. Who else might have been there? I will have a look. Lumpur Upasi was also present from Asom Bangmot. Lumpur Cheng of Wat Bang Pang in Nonthaburi, great master of the previous century. Lumpur Im of Wat Hua Khao, so famous for his magic rings and Khmer alchemical metallurgy. Lumpur An of Wat Prayat, so famous for his Prat Prut Nang and so many other amulets. Lumpur An Wat Prayat, who was of course the direct Luksit from Lumpur Klan of Wat Prayat, who came before him. Very popular both in Thailand, Singapore, and even with Westerners. Lumpur An. Lumpur Lua, Wat Sao Changok, so famous for his paladkik. Some people say the number one paladkik. Pra Putta Kosajan Jaren from Wat Thep Sirin, that came before Jau Kun No, the same temple as Krubajan. Lumpur Pum of Wat Bang Klo. Lumpur Tiso Uan of Wat Baromaniwat. Somdet Prat Sankarat Chern of Wat Bawaraniwet, the royal temple. Wat Bawan is not the temple of the royal Emerald Buddha, it's a royal temple in Bangkok. If you've been to the Khao San Road, it's the temple at the top. And that is a temple that is usually presided over by the head royal monk of Thailand, the Somdet Prat Sankarat, which at that time was Chern. Pra Putta Nuam of Wat Anong, Lumpur Nuam of Wat Anong, Lumpur Nuam, very famous, and Lumpur Tap, after Wat Lumpur Tap of Wat Anong, also famous of Wat Anong Anontaburi for his Pitta Mekasit. Lumpur Seng of Wat Kalayana Lumpur Plian Wat Tai, Lumpur Nor Wat Klang Ta Rua, Lumpur Lek of Wat Bang Nom Ko in Ayutthaya, Lumpur Jem of Wat Wang Deng Nuea. You might not have heard of that. Is a great master, I know. Lumpur Chuang, Wat Ban Prek Tai, Lumpur Art of Wat Don Gai Di, Lumpur Grin of Wat Sapan Sung, who was also around with Luksit of Lumpur Iam of Wat Sapan Sung, famous for the good and the great Pitta Wat Sapan Sung, Lumpur Grin. สมเด็จพระสังฆราชอยู่ of Wat Saket. Wat Saket, another royal temple, which is, some people know it as the Golden Mount in Bangkok with the golden chetty on top of the hill. Lumpur Choi of Wat Jetadaram, Lumpur Pan of Wat Tep Tidaram in Bangkok, Lumpur Chek of Wat Tong Thamachat, Lumpur Jia of Wat Prat Chetupon, Lumpur Phuen of Wat Prat Chetupon, Lumpur Lim of Wat Tung Bang Mot, Lumpur Pair of Wat Phra Sri Ratana Mahathat in Pitsunulok, so the abbot of Wat Pra Putta Chinarat, Lumpur Son of the famous Wat Plap Amulets, Lumpur Phueng of Wat Sampan Wong, Wat Sampan Tawong, also a very preferred temple for sacred Buddhist amulets, Wat Sampan Tawong, and many editions released by other great masters such as Lumpur Tho and Lumpur Tim have been released there. Lumpur Bua, Wat Arun, Temple of the Dawn. Lumpur Nak of Wat Arun, Temple of the Dawn. Lumpur Nak of Wat Arun, very, very, very preferred for his amulets in his own right. Lumpur Plang of Wat Du Yang. Lumpur Chum of Wat Pra Patton, Lumpur Sanit of Wat Rat Burana, Lumpur Germ of Wat Rat Burana, Lumpur Suk also of Wat Rat Burana, present in the ceremony. Lumpur Akom Sun Tarama of Wat Rat Chaburana or Wat Rat Burana as well. Lumpur Di of Wat Tewa Songkram, Lumpur Prayat of Wat Sutat, Lumpur Plot of Wat Luang Sawan, Lumpur Im of Wat Chai Phrik Mala, or Wat Chaya Phrik Mala. Chaya Phrik is a flower representing His Majesty Raman IX. Mala means the temple of the garland of Chaya Phrik flowers. Lumpur Im of Wat Chaya Phrik Mala. Lumpur Piam of Wat Got Lak, Lumpur Tong of Wat Don Sathon, Lumpur Krut of Wat Tho Law, Wat Tho Law, Lumpur Greep of Wat Taling Chan, Lumpur Sap of Wat Sankarat Chawat, Lumpur Men of Wat Sao Tong Tong, Lumpur Rod of Wat Wang Nam Wat Wang Nam, Lumpur Rod of Wat Wang Nam, Lumpur Sai of Wat Payakaram, Lumpur Seng of Wat Prajantat Kham, Lumpur Pit of Wat Rakang, Wat Makang, Lumpur Pit of Wat Makang was a Kruba Ajan of Lumpur Top and an equal Kruba Ajan with Lumpur Suk in the times of Lumpur Suk, Wat Pak Klong Makam Tao. Lumpur Pit, Wat Makang was the same era and a very great monk. His amulets are even harder to find than those of Lumpur Suk. If you ever find a takrut of Lumpur Pit, Wat Makang, keep it. Lumpur Am, Wat Nongabog, famous for his lucky carved goat amulets. Lumpur Ma of Wat Nam Khư, Lumpur Chan of Wat Ban Yang, Lumpur Muan of Wat Rong Heap, Lumpur Rian of Wat Nong Bua, famous for his pitta and his carved wooden amulets. He was the Luksit of his mentor, Luang Po Yim of Wat Nong Bua, who came before him, Luang Po Chai of Wat Panan Cheng, Luang Po Plum of Wat Pak Klong Makam Tao, which is of course direct Luksit with Luang Po Suk of Wat Pak Klong Makam Tao, Luang Po Nap of Wat Lakang, Luang Po Liap of Wat Lao, Luang Po Pak of Wat Bung Tong Lang. I think that's actually it should be Wat Bung Tong Luang, but they write it as Wat Bung Tong Lang. Luang Po Son of Wat Lat Ya, Luang Po Phược of Wat Mori, Luang Po Pin of Wat Bawarani Wet, another important monk of the Royal Temple of Wat Bawan. Luang Po Jiang of Wat Jaren Thamaram, Luang Po Tong Yu of Wat Pracha Sitaram. Luang Po Tong Yu, also very great monk, make own amulets of their own fame. Luang Po Wai, Wat Dawadung, in fact all of these masters did. Luang Po Glung, Wat Suan Keo, Luang Po Am, another Luang Po Am of Wat Wong Kong, Luang Po Jan of Wat Klong Ranong, Luang Po Oi of Wat Sai, Luang Po Si of Wat Plap, a great master and a great temple for amulets. Pra Ajan Chua of Wat Plap, who is famous maker of amulets of Wat Plap. No? Luang Po Pring of Wat Bang Bakok, so great famous master for his Somdet and his powder amulets, Jindamani powder amulets, and for his famous Luk Om and his coin amulets, famous for Kongrapan, Kelklat, Chatri, protection, invincibility. Luang Po Pring of Wat Bang Bakok, one of my favorite masters. Luang Po Jai, Wat Sadet. Luang Po Pring, a different one, from Wat Ratchanada. Luang Po Kham of Wat Si Tot Satep in Bangkok. Luang Po Nu of Wat Patum Wanaram. Luang Po Tong Kam of Wat Patum Kong Ka. Luang Po Jiang of Wat Jaren Sutaram. Luang Po Grong of Wat Sawang Arom. Luang Po Niam of Wat Sao Tong Tong. Luang Po Bun of Wat Intararam. That's Wat Bang Hun Prom, by the way. Wat Intra. Luang Po Plien of Wat Bung. Luang Po Cham of Wat Tong Kung, which is the same line as Luang Po Sai of Wat Tong Kung, so famous for his alchemical pirod rings, magic rings. Luang Po Prom Son Rod of Wat Ban Prai. Luang Po Jan of Wat Somanat Sawihan. I actually know the abbot of Wat Somanat Sawihan, the current abbot, and he's a great Vipassana master. Luang Po Som, Wat Rat Burana. Luang Po Bud, Wat Bang Plagot. I would say Plagat, I think I wrote it wrong. Wat Bang Plagot. Luang Po To of Wat Ban Kluai, another great famous monk. Luang Po Tong Yu of Wat Bang Hua Sua. Luang Po Wong of Wat Saket, very famous for his blessings more than his amulets. Pra Ajan Pong, Wat Kampang. Pra Atigan Chai of Wat Prem Pracha. Luang Po Rod of Wat Gun, I would assume Wat Gun Gatin. Luang Po Tiang of Wat Bang Hua Sua. And Luang Po Derm, last but not least, of Wat Nong Po. He didn't actually, Luang Po Derm of Wat Nong Po didn't actually come to the ceremony, but what he did was inscribe yantra foils to be used as muan san in the smelting of the ceremony. So Luang Po Derm was not actually present during the blessing, but he made blessed yantra foils, which usually get rolled into takrut, but when you are making metallic amulets, you inscribe the foils and they are smelted into the sacred metals. So with smelted sacred metals from the great Luang Po Derm of Wat Nong Po. And that is basically the documented information about the making of, blessing of, and which monks were involved with the Rian Pra Putta Chinarat, Wat Sutat, Run Indo-China. There are many different PIM, so you have different block presses. So it doesn't matter if it is the Loi Ong statuette, it is the Rian Sa-A Keed, or the Rian Block Rag, Block Song, or it is the Nuea Tong Daeng in copper, or it's in Nawaloha. It doesn't matter. All the same ceremony. So the Rian Sa-A Mee Pra Putta Chinarat, be it a Pim Yai or a Pim Leg, and the Rup Law Loi Ong statuettes, Pra Putta Chinarat, and the Prat Bhusha statues of Pra Putta Chinarat from Wat Sutat in the Indo-China 2485 blessing ceremony all come under this particular documentation. Rather confusing, rather long-winded, but for documentation purposes, there you go. I hope this helps, and that if you have an amulet of this edition or you want to collect one, that now you know a little bit more information about your amulet which you have, or the amulet which you seek. And if you're just a student and just want to know without having an amulet, that's also great knowledge for you. And here just a little look at the Rublaw Indo-China, one of various PIM which were released in the same edition, just for visual appreciation, even though I was focusing on the Rian Sa-A Mee Putta Chinarat model. I hope to continue this documentation in further videos. And so, because I'm very spontaneous, I won't predict what's going to be in the next episode. If it's going to be covering this amulet, the Loi Ong Putta Chinarat, or the Putta Chinarat and the Prat Bhusha, or if I'm just going to take the whole pantheon of all the powder amulets and other amulets of Luang Por Supot and other Geji Ajahn who brought amulets from around the country to be blessed within the ceremony of the Indo-China ceremony and released at Wat Sutat. Some of them blessed, the Chinarat ones blessed at Wat Pra Putta Chinarat, Wat Pasi, Ratana Sasadaram in Pitsanulok, and others from all around the country. So I'm not sure, but this one is a Loi Ong Putta Chinarat from Indo-China. As to the one we were looking at mainly in this video, in single images, not the image with front and back sides in one screen, but the image of front and later back, has a guarantee card and is in my possession, and is indeed a Rian Pra Putta Chinarat of Wat Sutat, Run Indo-China ceremony in gold casing. This particular coin is from the block press called, is the PIM from the block press Sa-A Mee. It's called Pim Sa-A Mee, which means the letter A and the letter Sa have a tiny line on them. Pim Sa-A Mee, Sa-A Mee. The letter S and the letter A has a very fine hairline next to them, which is a point of recognition of authenticity and is defined on this authenticity certificate, which in this case came from the Sataban Guarantee Prat Society, which is one of the longest standing societies. And most people know that I stand for my own knowledge, not for what the opinion of societies, but this is one of the 2 or 3 societies that have existed for decades and are still as respected now as they were then. So it has more value than some of the many certificates available from the hundreds of smaller societies that popped up over the years, which I call gravy trainers or getting on the bandwagon, but don't have all the knowledge of all amulets. So this particular amulet, I have one in my possession, this one with this certificate, and is available to VIPs only who know how to contact me about that. And if you don't, then you can I won't message you if you don't message me first and ask, but you can contact me on line ID Thailand Amulets. You can try WhatsApp, but I don't check it often, or you can email us on thailandamulets@outlook.com if you're interested in this particular amulet, which we've been looking at mostly during the talk. So, there you go. Part 1 of the Tamra Pra Putta Chinarat and other amulets in later episodes of the Indo-China, Piti Indo-China, the Indo-China war ceremony, which has a big tamra to it because it wasn't just only ceremonies made at Wat Sutat. The Indo-China war ceremonies were made all around Thailand. And finally at Wat Sutat, a lot of amulets that were blessed in other places for Indo-China war were taken for another second, or I believe third biggest blessing, or second biggest blessing ceremony in the history of Thai Buddhist amulet making and Thai Buddha magic in remembered, written, documented history. So, Ajahn Spencer, for this time, signing off for the Buddha Magic Project and my own channel, hoping it helps. Sadhu. May all beings be happy. And I hope you enjoyed this particular vlog.